Hello, church. As promised, I am going to be giving you a summary of what we've covered a couple of weeks ago in talking about the next unfolding of discipleship at Crosstown Church. The idea being that discipleship and this year of discipleship is very simple, uses the rhythms of our lives, but has a certain depth to it that takes time to slowly unfold as we create new habits. And so far, we've been talking a lot about the midweek devotions, the shared rhythm of a common text that we look at together. But now we're moving to the first unfolding, which is our second unfolding, which is the monthly oikos gathering. Oikos meaning is a Greek word for home, or the place where the church comes in people's homes, brings transformation in the community together, but also in the neighborhood that we're part of. We started with this idea of the midweek devotions that we've been working on. I just want to walk through that quickly. Midweek devotions involves a very simple time of personal worship. We'll be talking a little bit more about this in the future, but the idea that we can slow down, quiet our hearts, maybe spend time in worship with a worship song or using the Jesus prayer, the Lord's Prayer. We'll talk about that in the future, but just really allowing ourselves to slow down from the busyness of life, ask God to speak to us directly through the work of His Spirit, and be open to how what God is saying impacts our own lives. So the first of the three questions under the midweek devotions is this focus on God and how His goodness and the gospel or the good news itself. We've been focusing on the Psalms, and it's allowed us to really kind of grow in and stretch in, focusing first on the gospel, and then everything else, what God says to us, the observe question, and especially the doing question, is founded not on trying to make ourselves right with God, but rather on the gospel, us living out of the gospel. The second question is about listening to what God is saying to us, observing what God is saying. And here you can have a very mechanical process of just kind of noting the different points and movements in the text. But then the next part of that question is how is what you're reading and kind of summarizing what's getting your attention connects to your own personal life and to your heart and to the rhythms of your life. What is God saying to you? Where's the challenge? Where's the personal impact? And then the final question is, what are you going to do about it? This is a challenging part, I think, of personal devotions. Often we're okay with celebrating who God is. We love learning new information from God, the observe question, but now the doing part, being open to maybe God is calling us to do specific things it could be simple, could be complicated, could be easy, could be hard, but write those things down. And of course, the real call in listening to God and Him continuing to speak to us clearly is obedience. The second unfolding, which we're moving to now, is this monthly oikos gathering. And it's a very simple meeting, in some ways similar to how we tend to do church, having a meal together in someone's home. Ask life-sharing questions. One of the neat ways of doing that is, as you're eating a meal together, to ask the high-low buffalo question. That's what's the high of your week? What's the low? What's the buffalo or the weird thing that happened? These first two parts, again, these are easy ways for people who are even just exploring the Christian faith, especially coming new to our community. They can easily enter. They can have a meal with us, and we know that's very transformative, and then sharing life with these life-sharing questions. The final move, kind of at the end of this time of the oikos gathering, is walking through the oikos summary sheet. In some ways, this summarizes a lot of the devotional things happening in our lives. Each of you should have received 4 weeks each month of particular texts that we're sharing together at this time, but also at least 1 or 2 oikos summary sheets. This is basically something that you would fill out as much as you can ahead of the meeting. The acronym instead of GOD is LAMP, lamp. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light for my path. So here you fill out, how have you been listening to God? And what have you been reading? This is really, as time goes by, you will pick your own kind of books that you feel God's calling you to spend more time reading. You might write, how have you been listening to God? I've been reading Isaiah. You might be reading around a theme like peace or anger or truth. This is what you've been reading. You write that down. And then what has God been saying to you? This might be just a list of the answer to the O question under weekly devotionals, but there might be a combined theme that God is speaking to your heart. L, listening to God. A, this is kind of new to us. We've been sharing our midweek devotions and saying what God has been calling us to do, but now here's where community can really be fruitful. In Luke chapter 10, Jesus has been teaching them. They've been observing. They've been getting to know who God is through Jesus, or the G and the O. Then he calls them to go out and preach the gospel. And then when they come back, he holds them accountable. He says, what happened? And they said, oh, it was amazing. People were being healed. Demons were being cast out. And they were celebrating. And then Jesus holds them accountable and says, well, that's great. But the best and most important thing is that your names are written in the book of life. Accountability is a big part of discipleship. So this is where you might say, what are you going to do? You might again summarize the things that God called you to do week to week. But again, there might be a growing theme of what you feel God's calling you to do. And here comes the accountability part. How can we hold you accountable? You might say, well, ask me about it on Sunday, that I did it. Or keep asking me about this over the next number of months. We hold each other accountable is an important way of truly growing as a disciple of Jesus Christ. Now, this M question is a kind of a new one, and one that is, again, going to be part of this unfolding process. The question about missional living, people that we are investing in that particular week or that particular month, people we've been talking with, people we've been praying about. Again, we will get into this more in the future. And the final question, the P question, is how can we pray for you? These might be connected to what God's been saying to you, what he's calling you to do, just regular stuff going on in our lives. LAMP. All right, so that is it for now, and we'll just keep unfolding discipleship